I will say, I adore this power button. I think this is the cutest little dinkiest thing ever. What's up everybody? Gaming as Adults, I'm Austin, and this is the Thermaltake View 51 TG ARGB. That is a lot. Thermaltake View 51, we're just, View 51, that's what it is. Because all the other ones are the same thing, they just have different things inside of them. This is the one with the pretty lights and the tempered glass, and I'm going to tell you all of the things that I like about it and all of the things that I absolutely despise about it. So let's get started. First and foremost, it's quiet when you close the door, and to take this door off is so simple. This is probably one of the best ideas to come out of Thermaltake in a very, very long time. And if you know me, I love to bash on Thermaltake, so this actually speaks volumes. So on this case, 3 of the 6 sides are tempered glass. The front, top, and right side. It's particularly nice. It does come with 2 200mm fans and one 120 back here in its original configuration. They will work. They have a controller on the back side of the motherboard tray. Everything here is designed for water cooling. The system in it right now is not a water-cooled system, obviously, because of the customer and their wishes. But we're not here to talk about the system. We're here to talk about the case. Down here, you can see these are 2.5-inch SSD drive holders, housings, bays. All right, they're very simple to work with. They have a little thumb screw right there, on both of them. And you just pull that out, lift this thing out, and mount your drive, plug it in. It's very simple. Over here, we have Thermaltake's pump mount thing. Now, I don't like Thermaltake's pumps or their reservoirs. So this is an absolute eyesore, and I despise it, like, so much. This is, it doesn't fit any other pump. You could have made it just a little bit larger and it would have fit any EK pump, but you didn't. You chose not to do that. That is very anti-competition. That's like, I know my product is bad, but I'm still going to sell it. In this particular case, there was also an issue right down here. If you look very closely, you can see that there's a little thumb screw here. Well, for whatever reason, Thermaltake in their infinite wisdom decided that that thumb screw did not need to be there at all, and this plastic did not need to have any hole in it at all. So this hole, 200mm mounting bracket for your fans, mind you, these fans were pre-installed, was just flopping in the wind when it got here. I pulled it out of the box and all I could hear is clank, 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 clank. And I was like, what and why? So in order to fix this, all I did was I just took a screwdriver and a sacrificial screw with a point, and I forced a hole. The plastic is pretty cheap, and then I just grabbed a random thumb screw from a box that I had of other Thermaltake parts. Nice thing is that they haven't changed their thumb screws in God knows how many years. The back here can house either a 360, maybe a 420 as well. I don't know about a 480. You'd have to check their page, but it can house quite a bit of radiator space. So if you had an all-in-one closed loop liquid cooler, then that definitely would work for either your CPU or your GPU, though I should hope that you prioritize your CPU. You could also mount another one up top. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Up top, these are 140mm fans. These ones I added from Thermaltake. Despite the fact that I despise their fans as well, I didn't want it to have just random TT in the front and then like EK Vardars up top and not match. It had to all be one, you know? In the back here, we have either the exhaust or intake, however you want to configure it, for this 120mm fan. Let me reiterate, this one is included. And then we also have this very strange and curious PCIe bracket. This thing is weird, let me tell you. If you look very closely, you can see a couple of these holes are actually vacant. And the reason for that is you can take off this cover with these two thumb screws, and then with these screws right here, this whole bracket will actually turn 90 degrees. So you can have vertical GPU or horizontal GPU mounting. Now the downside with that is that they only include 2 brackets to mount, I would assume, 2 graphics cards, and that would be the only thing that you would be able to mount. There's no room for anything else. In addition, you also need riser cables, which are not included. So it's bad marketing if you ask me, because they show it in their picture for the box that, you know, it's like this. It's not like this by stock. It is rotated the other 90 degrees. So if you didn't know that, there are no riser cables included. Make sure that you get riser cables. I think the one that I have in here is a 30 millimeter and it is barely long enough. So definitely go with 60 millimeter or greater riser cables. So this is where you'll find your 3.5-inch bay drives for disk drives, or maybe you have like an older proprietary SSD that is of absurd sizing. The screw is captive, which is like, I think this should be a staple of everything Thermaltake. If it's exterior, it needs captive screws, period. Make it happen, Thermaltake. All right, but these drives are really, really awesome. They're super simple. I'd like to say, oh, these ones might not be. These are not toolless. Bad. For shame. So these require screws, but they are relatively easy to access and out of the way. So there are 2 of them. These are included, thank God, though I wouldn't put it past Thermaltake to charge them for some time in the future. You also find your back screws to take off the top here. This tempered glass panel simply just pulls back a little bit and then goes up. You will also find back here your power supply mount. It is behind your motherboard. So for those of you that like to put every single cable into your power supply and leave it there until the sands of time stop blowing, this is perfect for you because no one will ever see it. Now, front panel here is pretty simple. There's really not much to be said. I mean, you get the standard hard drive LED indicator that nobody actually knows what it does. That's a hard drive indicator. It says that there's activity on your disk hard drives. You've got, you know, mic, headphones, reset button, power buttons all the way up here. It does not glow. If you thought it did, I'm sorry. It looks like it should, but it doesn't. This is one of the Thermaltake blunders that they push a product that's not ready. But it does have Type-C, and it does have USB 3.0 and 2.0. So that is a nice little feature. Let's move on to this backside, the most important bit that everyone's worrying about. Now this back panel is actually the only reason why I would ever recommend this case to literally anybody. I don't really care, like you could have a passively cooled computer. I do not care. This back panel is the only reason why I will ever recommend it. Because it doesn't matter how pretty it looks, if the back panel is not ready to have any sort of ventilation, then this computer is doomed from the start. If you look right here, you'll notice there's a bunch of ventilation. Enough ventilation for what I would say is probably a 360 millimeter radiator. So 3 120 millimeter fans. And they do have magnetic dust filters. So you can simply just take these out and put them back in at your leisure. And this is phenomenal. Finally, they've made a case that looks good and can breathe. Both are very important. So this is like, how much can be hidden? A lot. Like a lot. It's all in all a really solid case. It's not great, it's not perfect. There are corners to be cut. The MSRP is something like $150. which I think is steep, but it is a case that will last. I didn't mention this before, but this is the controller for the RGB fans. These are their stupid connectors for each fan. So if you wanted to have your own, good luck. I think this is an output, so you might be able to plug it into a different controller. I'm not so certain about that. But those stupid Thermaltake fans, Thermaltake has put their goodness in it. I say that facetiously. I hate it when they do this. They do the same thing with their all-in-ones. That is what it is. It can hold no more than the 3 that are included. It branches off. It's really trash. So we were about to give this thing a final score, and then we noticed this. Now, to the uneducated eye, this is nothing more than a cheap piece of plastic to cover up a defect that, for whatever reason, was included in the case. However, that is not what this is. If you notice, what is directly above that? A radiator bracket. Do you know what most radiators have right there? Holes, plugs. That is a drainage port. That's what that is. So when you take this back panel off, you know, the one that's all ventilated with all the mesh and everything, to clean it, you can just take your ball valve and just turn it, and all of your liquid will come out through the bottom. Now, this could be an Achilles heel. And the reason why is because if you look at this, you have to balance this on, like, this is where the pads are and in relation to where that hole is. And this is just nothing more than like pressed in there. So in order to take this out, you have to press it out from the inside. And then you would have to balance this on like 2 stools in order to drain it. It's cool and it's a great concept, but it would never actually be useful because the amount of work necessary to like use it, like how, I would never try to balance a computer on 2 stools in order to drain it. That is the dumbest idea ever. Now over a sink would be a little bit easier, but if you had anything more than water in it, then you shouldn't put it over a sink because you'd have to dilute the water. But in any case, we just noticed that. And then also, while we're down here, this entire bottom is capable of also housing, I would say probably another 360 millimeter radiator, or a 420 if you like 140 millimeter fans like I do. And this whole thing just comes out. And this is a very fine mesh for the bottom. All in all, we would say out of 10, this is probably a 6.5. I mean, the reason why is just, it's the sloppy mistakes that are gonna get you. The pump bracket, the fact that it's only works for your pumps, you know, the front fan bracket, the fact that it wasn't mounted to anything on the bottom. Hell, the fan controller and the RGB controller, the fact that you can only fit 3 slots on it and they're all proprietary connectors. The fact that there's no included PCIe extender for something that you advertise on the side of your box. It's sloppy. It's almost there, but it's sloppy. If you're going to have these defects in it, number 1, you need to clearly annotate in the pictures, all right? There needs to be a little blurb next to that picture where you see a vertical GPU with a water block on it. It needs to say, PCIe extension or PCIe riser card not included. Because that, it's just, or like, how much is it? It's like pennies on the dollar. Was it like $3? You're already charging $150 for this thing. So, 6.5 out of 10. You're almost there. All right, Now this little blurb is specific to this particular build, specifically for the owner of this particular build. That way when they have a question about it, something, you know, in the realms of probably upgrading, they don't have to consult me for all of their needs, wants, or desires. So we're going to go into what is the specifics of the hardware in this case. On this Enermax cooler, there is the capacity for another 120mm fan if you wanted it. The bracket is already here. All you have to do is pull this off like so. This centerpiece will come out. You just push it out. And then the screws for it are right here. All four. They're already included. They're just underneath these pads. This whole thing is just retention clips. Just put it over like this. Just like that. Make sure I actually got it on there. All right. When you install the fan, make sure you plug it in. The header to plug it into for the normal fan header is right there. This is this fan. Okay? This will give you power to your fan. RGB goes back there, and the fan header goes back there. Don't worry about mixing them up. There's only one way that it can go. You have 32 gigs of RAM. If you want more RAM, there are 2 vacant slots. It's very simple. It only goes in one way. Don't force it. This graphics card, I gave you extra room, so if you wanted more graphics card or to swap it out, it's very simple. There's just a couple of thumb screws on the back to pull it out. You also have extra power here, so power is not a constraint either. But the main thing that I'm worried about isn't any of this that I've already said. The main thing that I'm worried about is your storage solution. If we come in here, you will see this stick right here. There's another one up top. These two are your storage solution. If you take out one, they will both not work. You will lose all of your data, okay? Be very careful about this. There are only slots for 2 of them, so you cannot add any more of this stick type SSD storage. You have 2 terabytes. If you want more storage, I did give you the option to do such. These are 2.5 inch. You have 2 of them. There are also power cables to enable you to do that. In addition to that, there is 3.5 inch on the back, which I can show you right now. In addition to the 2.5 inch down there, 2 of them, you also have 2 3.5 inches right here. These just pinch and pull. All right, there's screws, and the screws are in the back of this back panel. This back panel comes off with 2 thumb screws in the back. Pull it towards you, backwards. Before you power this up, this is your accessory box. This has all of your screws and everything towards it, so please don't leave it in there. And this is your mess of cabling. You should have every cable that you need, to include extra RGB, all right? I got the special kind. They only go in one way. If your RGB thing that you want to plug into this has 4 pins, you got the wrong kind. You will notice that there are 2 of these that are taped. It's not because they're damaged, they're just really loose. So we tape them because they're loose. In the event that any of your fans, the pretty lights, do not come on, all you have to do is take these and push them together until they come on. There's 2 of them. They're loose, be gentle. I suspect that they will come loose during shipping. So, to summarize, before you turn on, take screws out. Check this thing. Push it together. And that should pretty much summarize everything up. That should pretty much cover everything under the sun that you will need to know for this computer. One more thing. This is not your video output. Do not plug it into here because nothing will happen. Nothing should happen. This is your video output. All right, that's it for today. If you want to follow us on social media, the links are down in the description. We have a Discord and we are active on it, and our Discord has recipes.